Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Titan Avenger Gaming. I'm here with Ryan tonight. We are going to talk about some college football and some NFL football. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about talking about football
Yeah,
because
me
it's like
too.
it's the best thing in the world for me.
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to probably break this down into different little tidbits and segments. Talk about some small things real quick. Um, First off, we're just going to jump into roughing the passer. I've seen two roughing the passers in one day that was a bunch of crap. Tom Brady got slung around. They called roughing the passer. I just thought it was a good, clean hit, slinging him down. Did it kind of, pound him on the ground hard? Sure, yeah, but then again, he also looked like he was kind of kicking at the guy when the guy was getting up. So it's like, well, why didn't we call that and cancel out the penalties? And then there was a penalty later on that day that you might as well winked at him wrong and got a roughing the passer. I I get the quarterback's the most important position out there, but I feel like we're doing a lot of things like we can't help the fact that there are steroids in things that are in chickens and cows and all the animals and stuff that they breed, and then they make the meat and stuff, and we're technically eating those steroids that is in that meat. So
Yeah,
people are getting taller, they're getting stronger. There's all this stuff. Like the reason why Tom Brady is going the way he is because he's looking at, he's hired some, dietitians and stuff to how can I eat properly? How can I do weight training properly? Like LeBron James, the reason why he's going as long as the Joe Montanas didn't have that. And it was a lot brutal then. Like you hit a quarterback, it was as bad as hockey. Like there's a reason why Jim McMahon and some of them are having memory issues. But I don't want to see anybody going head to head and trying to hurt anybody on purpose, but I see it too many times over the last 2 years, just a hard hit and the person's out. Like, what happened to these helmets that are supposed to absorb the shock? Like these cell phone cases that we get that absorb the shock so your phone doesn't break. Where's these helmets? Do we need to wear those big red padded helmets that everybody wears? Do we need to go to that? Because we've already scooted the kick returns 5 yards back, so there wouldn't be touchbacks. Then we're like, oh, there's too many injuries on kick returns. Let's scoot it back so people get touchbacks. And now we do a fair catch if it's in the red zone to get the ball in the 25 instead of running it. Like you said about baseball, you and I were just talking about before the podcast. Baseball needs to be fun. A lot of people say, I hate watching baseball. Oh, it's so boring. The action in baseball is horrible. Some of those people hadn't even been to a live game. I'd rather go to a live game than watching one on TV. But you're going to get to the point where if you get to the quarterback within 2 yards of reaching out for the quarterback, they're going to blow the whistle like they do in practices. They're going to be like, oh, he's wearing the red jersey. You can't tackle him.
yeah,
And then when somebody does tackle him, personal foul, you've been suspended 6 games because you knew better. Well, then you're going to have people not intercepting the ball as much. You're going to have maybe passing records broken because somebody's going to be able to throw the ball they want, knowing that they can't get sacked, knowing they don't have to roll out unless, or you can say, well, if you go outside the pocket, then you're all game. You already see people trying to tackle somebody when a quarterback's going for a slide. And 9 times out of 10, they get a rough in the, like I don't know. I just don't know what to say about it because it's frustrating. Again, I don't want to see people get hurt, but we can't help the fact that all these players are getting bigger and stronger. And there's different weight things because they want their teams to be bigger and stronger. You want the Alabamas, you want the Ohio State to be the bigger and stronger, to be developed, because you want to be drafted. You want to be a draft pick, or you want to be a lottery pick. You want to make millions, to make your mom happy, to have a great career, because that's what you dreamed about since you're 4 years old. I'm going to be the star quarterback, Super Bowl champion, MVP. I'm going to be the next Tom Brady. I'm going to be the next Marshall Faulk.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. So what's your take on it?
Well, what was the game? I think it was the Bears Cowboys game. I was watching that last week, and I think that's where it happened a couple of times. Well, just once. But there was a play, it was a roughing the passer play, and he didn't, like, it was clearly, it was not, the guy didn't finish, like, he didn't go through with the whole tackle. He hit him, and I wouldn't call it a hit. I mean, I would call it more of a tap than anything, but he hit him. And when he did that, it, I don't know if it caused, I don't think it caused anything. Like, it was kind of sort of after he threw the ball. And I say sort of, it looked like he could have affected the throw, but because he had contact with him, it negated an interception.
That happened in two games at the same time. I was watching the Red Zone channel,
Yeah.
and there's another game. The same thing happened. There was a roughing the passer. Now, this one, it wasn't like it was a weak play, but the thing is, it was so many seconds after. I could see why they called that one.
Yeah.
Because he could have stopped, but he just shoved the guy down. Didn't have to do that. Where Justin Fields, yeah, he made the contact. He came down. I think he kind of grazed the head, and and I get that by rule. Yeah, they say you can't touch the head at all, but
And I'm not a fan. I really am not a fan of most of the roughing the passer calls. What is is it a 10 or 15-yard penalty?
talking about for roughing the passer,
Yeah.
15.
See, if we are bent on making it a penalty, then I think it needs to go the way of the face mask penalty of old, which I actually liked that face mask penalty. Because, like, there was face mask penalties, like, was it incidental or was it accidental, basically? You could do the same thing. And, like, one of them carried a 15-yard penalty and the other one carried like a 5-yard penalty and everything. And I think it actually helped with face mask. I think it helped cut down face mask and everything like that. But I mean, like, if someone like taps as a quarterback, like the guy, I forgot which player it was, so, and I don't hardly ever remember players' names all the time, anyways. But if it was like the Cowboys defender who barely pushed Justin Fields, that doesn't need to be a 15-yard penalty from the spot of the foul or from wherever. It needs to be 5, and then it needs to be reviewed as it continues on into the future. It needs to be reviewed and say, is this really a roughing the passer penalty? And maybe we can get a little bit more traction on what it really means to rough the passer and things like that. Now, I was watching Skip and Shannon Undisputed the other day, and they were talking about Tom Brady and oh my gosh, Aaron Rodgers. And essentially, maybe this is a whole different subject, and I'm not going into that subject, but it was talking about, Shannon was arguing about how, they're sort of, it's not just them, but they're sort of the last of a dying breed. And it's that, constant pocket passer. They'll sit in the pocket as long as they can, or they'll take the sack. And now you have a lot of quarterbacks that are geared to run the ball, that are, in these RPO systems. So they, they're basically, at times, they're basically running backs for the most part. And, you see that all over the league. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. That's just to name, the two major ones. You can maybe argue, I would argue Patrick Mahomes, Tua, if he stays healthy, Jalen Hurts, you got these guys. And if they're sitting there taking off with their legs, or they're okay with taking off with their legs, then, again, like you were saying before, you can't, once they get hit, you can't be sitting there saying, okay, well, is this a roughing the passer penalty or not? Because if they get hit in mid stride, and throw the ball in mid stride, that's not roughing the passer. That can't be roughing the passer because the person was going for a very legitimate tackle when they throw the ball. And there are times when I'm watching the ball, when I'm watching these guys, do what they do, and I'm like, it seems like they've already passed the line of scrimmage when they throw the ball, and but it's not, they don't call it, and everything, which is not. This is a whole different argument, or a whole different subject again. But I mean, again, like you can't if they're going to take off running, I don't think it's fair to like be watching the defender's whole move when they have done what they did. It's like last year, or not, was it last year? Yeah, last year with the whole Kenny Pickett situation, which college football, to its credit, immediately fixed. He did the
Yeah.
fake slide, and the defenders backed off like they're supposed to do, like
Yeah.
the NFL would want them to do, and he went for a touchdown. Well, that's not fair. That's not fair because he made himself vulnerable, and the defenders did exactly what they were supposed to do.
It's just
And
like when
as a result, they got punished as the defense
yeah.
because they gave up a touchdown.
Well, it's just like when a quarterback is quote unquote giving himself up by going out of bounds, and so you slow down because if you touch them going out of bounds, they're probably gonna call roughing the passer. So
Yeah.
you slow down, and the quarterback goes, "Oh, they're slowing down. Boom, boom! I'm gonna run for 8 more yards down the sideline." Again, it stinks, but yeah. So I get it. It's frustrating. And another topic I want to jump into, which deals with pass interference. I still think you should get your challenges for, looking overview and see if somebody got a touchdown or got that first down or yardage or whatever. I still think there needs to be one more flag in there, just one flag for a penalty that you can challenge. It's I know they did the whole thing where they were reviewing pass interferences and stuff, and they thought it was a joke, so they quit doing that. But I saw a pass interference in want to say did the Packers game go in overtime this week? No, they didn't. They got beat
No.
pretty bad at the Bills.
Yeah, they got beat by the Bills.
It was
It was
remember,
maybe the only overtime game that I know of this past week was Falcons and Panthers.
maybe that was it. There was a play thrown deep down the left sideline because oh yeah, it was because Panthers DJ Moore scored that huge touchdown, took his mask off. That was scooted back 15, and so he missed the extra point. Well, they threw the ball deep on one of the first plays, the Falcons did. And it was about in the 30 yard line. The receiver is running down the field, looks right, well, the pass is going to the left. So he turns left. The defender is there. He cannot break towards the ball because the defender is in the way. And if you're not making a play on the ball as a defender and you're stopping the receiver from making a play on the ball, then that is pass interference. And that's what happened. They didn't call it. Should have been in field goal range with a chance to win, and they didn't call it. And I think there's a lot of times like that where it should be tossed. And I understand there's sometimes you look at stuff in replay and you're like, nope. But in game time, you're like, oh man, that looked like a harder hit than you think. Like just like the head to head. I saw it in Tennessee game, college. It looked like he went head to head, but after they reviewed it, his shoulder was there. But it looked like he went head to head and they were going to try to kick him out of the game. But it's just I remember Tom Brady with the Patriots and Gronk was there. Tom Brady threw a pass to Gronk over the middle in the end zone. He was about 7-8 yards deep in the end zone. Well, the defender wasn't making a play on the ball, had his hands up, but Gronk was still running towards the goalpost and turns around, never makes a break back to the ball. Was he getting touched and kind of pushed? Yeah. but it wasn't a pass interference. And a lot of people said, "Oh, Patriots should have won. That was cheating. That was cheating. They didn't want to win." But if Gronk would have stopped and turned around, and tried to put forth effort towards the ball, pass interference. But it didn't happen, so they didn't go. They didn't get it. It's just one of those things. Sometimes you've got to think, what do the rules specifically say? Like the whole catch no catch with Des Bryant. He didn't make a football move. He was falling to the ground. The ball hits the ground, incomplete pass. He didn't catch the ball and leap. They can say that he was leaping, but he wasn't. He was not jumping, stretching out. He was falling down. So, anyways, what are your takes on pass interference? Whereas the rules, pass interference in general, just
Really and truthfully. So when I have to think about the just any kind of flags that are going to be thrown, it's something and like this comes up every single year, and someone says it at some point, and I start thinking about it, and so it's been said recently, and it's just the mindset of the refs when plays are happening, because there is a penalty every single play. Like if we really wanted to, they could throw a penalty every single play. Mostly it's holding within the offensive line and everything like that. But there's a penalty every single play. So I just really want to know what goes to the ref's mindset when they see a penalty and they just absolutely whiff on it. Do they do it on purpose? And like not do it on purpose because they want like a particular team to win or things like that. Because like for instance, when the Broncos played the Jets, there was a very obvious pass interference. What was his name by Sauce Gardner? He just completely like held Jerry Judy down. What on a play that would have absolutely been a touchdown pass, and it wasn't called penalty. And so like I always wonder like what every time I think of a ref and I think what's going through your mind if you actually see the penalties, what makes you think, okay, this play I'll be okay with throwing a penalty, in this play I won't throw a penalty. But to that whole point, I do have one frustration with pass interference plays, or like obvious pass interference plays, and that is, I think teams are actually trading big plays, like big potential like catches and things like that. They're trading big potential catch plays for actual pass interference plays. So like they're actually running plays that are designed to get some kind of pass interference call on it and everything. Maybe
yeah.
that's a conspiracy, but I actually believe that,
Well, no, I
because like you
believe
can kind of tell you can kind of tell when a team is like going for a penalty versus when a team is like actually out there
well, it's kind
trying
of
to
like
get the play.
when you see Aaron Rodgers when he knows that he can get somebody, they've jumped off or there's not too many men on the field. You know, he's got a signal that his team knows I'm going to call this, and just run down the field. Which that's a little bit different, but I really think that there's plays where there is plays like that. Where just like they run plays to have the ref screen the defense.
Yeah.
You know, because the ref's part of the field. So you can't help that. And then all of a sudden, boom, dude's wide open. You can't just run over. Well, you can run over the ref, but most people are going to go around him.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt the guy.
Yeah. And and then if you say, oh, that was vicious, he meant to run over the ref. Well, okay, then he's going to be in trouble. You can't say, all you can say is, no, I didn't mean to. And they're going to be like, well, video shows differently. But I think there's plays like that, just like in basketball. I'm sure there's plays where you're just going to go hard to the basket and try to draw a foul. Like we'll get and talking about this, but there's plays in baseball too. So
Yeah. And so their defense, I want to make this very clear. The defense that I'm going to talk about is already a bad defense, but I actually witnessed this in person, and I hated it because I witnessed it in person, but I also thought, okay, this is actually pretty neat and sort of confirms what I've been saying, or confirms my suspicions. And this is a college football team. When I went to the Arkansas BYU game, there was like a couple drives where BYU went down the field, and they went down the field because they got the pass interference calls. Now, I'm not saying that every single time that they got a pass interference call it wasn't Arkansas's fault. No, I'm not saying that at all. I think Arkansas, committed penalties on its own. But there was one in particular where I watched it because they replayed it a couple times on the jumbotron and they did it in slow mo. But when I saw it in person, I was like, oh, I saw what he did. The wide receiver, what he did was is as he was running the route, at the end of his route, the quarterback you could tell the quarterback was overthrowing him. I don't know if that was on purpose, but the quarterback was overthrowing him. So what he did is he turns his hand and he actually grabs he puts his hand on the jersey or on the person of the Arkansas defender, and then he tumbles forward, and it's like an automatic, flag that just gets thrown there. And I was like, he did that on purpose. Like he absolutely did that on purpose, and everything. So I mean, again, I really do believe plenty of teams out there are practicing for that in one way or another, and it's a strategy to win. So I'm not going to super knock it. I do think it takes away from the sport itself, but I mean, that's been my biggest gripe with pass interference plays is that I feel like too often it's designed and
Yeah.
and like it's just I don't know what you could do about it other than reviewing it, to be honest with you, because like there has to be some kind of obvious. I feel like there's probably obvious tells if you watch every single play in slow motion. But what was one of the reasons why they got rid of the or the penalties, not the penalties, the pass interference challenges before wasn't just because it was dumb. It's because people complained that it took too long to review and that made the games take a lot longer, which I kind of understand. At times, maybe that has to do with ads and whatnot in the games, but you know, I don't like them. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think I prefer my game at times a little bit uh, less involved with penalties. Saying that as someone who actually watched not a Razorback, a Bronco get a pass stolen from him because of the pass interference. I would wish they probably didn't. I wish they didn't call him as much, especially in crunch time moments. Like I kind of wish it would go down during like crunch time, like trying to drive down the field and things like that. I don't think that should be part of the strategy for 2-minute warnings. And I don't like seeing penalties turn into points. Like that's, I will give the Cowboys their due. 2 drives the Bears had on Sunday were 100% set up for points because of
Yeah.
some ridiculous calls. And I even told some friends of mine that are big Cowboys fans. I was like, man, I was like that, and it was like 2 in a row. I was like they 100% got down here because of ridiculous penalties. So yeah, that's my spiel.
All right. Well, we're going to move into talk about some surprises going on in NFL. My main thing, well, a lot of people see it as a surprise. I don't. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but Denver Broncos, mainly Russell Wilson. I don't know if you remember me talking about this back when he came in the league, but they had the Legion of Boom and that whole defense. Russell Wilson had Marshawn Lynch, who was one of the top running backs in the league. He could do whatever he wanted. He had no tight end. All he had really was Doug Baldwin, and at one point he had a Tyler Lockett, who was kind of like a Valdez Scantling, who every once in a while would break off for like a 50-yard catch, and that was about it until he actually turned into a go-getter with Baldwin having that injury and couldn't get over that. But I remember a couple of those big-time defensive players wanted the payday because they were the top linebackers. They were the top secondary. People could not do anything on them. Like record-breaking Denver Broncos offense gets stuffed in the Super Bowl.
I hated that day and I'll
Like,
always hate that day.
You wouldn't think that, and people say defense wins championships, and you see it. You've seen the Ravens, you know, um, win. You've seen other, defense, the Tampa Bay Bucks, their defense in the early 2000s won a Super Bowl. You see that. So you kind of figured, yeah, defense is probably going to win because offense hasn't played a defense that good before. But it was just kind of shocking. But I remember telling several people, I was like, we're going to see what Russell Wilson is made of. I was like, is Russell Wilson good? Yes. But unless they have the defense get the money that Russell Wilson got, Seahawks won't win another Super Bowl. Now, they still had some key pieces when they went a couple years later and lost at the goal line. But then again, here's another thing. You put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands to let him cook. And like I said, he makes that throw. They talk about how great his IQ is and stuff like that. He makes that throw on that slant, does not see that guy, boom. And it was a great play. I probably wouldn't even have seen that either, Some of the best ones probably wouldn't have both see that. But if he makes that throw, then it's a different story. They probably win the Super Bowl, and people are going to say, oh, that's the best call in NFL history. You have Marshawn Lynch, and you don't run it, and you actually throw the ball. Marvelous call. But now it's the dumbest call because you just have Marshawn Lynch. But anyways, beside the point. They haven't done anything. A couple years ago, Russell Wilson was having MVP-like year numbers. Him and DK Metcalf were just, having a field day. Well, then he fizzled out. Couldn't do anything right. Team started losing. Now he's with the Broncos, and you've got some talented receivers, and you got some talented running backs. And it's rough watching, and all I could do is laugh at some of the stuff I saw when they had that Thursday night game, and it was just like some field goals, and it was a missed field goal, and then it was a red zone trip, and it was like, and I told my wife, I was like, this is what I've been saying. I really think that Russell Wilson is not the guy. I was like, I really do. And I like Russell Wilson. He's a great guy. He was great for the community in Seattle. But I don't think he's not the game changer. He's not a Tom Brady going to Tampa. He's not a Peyton Manning going to Denver. Like this AFC West was supposed to be the best league. And technically, yeah, Chiefs are 5-2, whatever. But the Chargers haven't looked like a growing Chargers team. The Broncos are 3-5. Like a couple of those wins they squeaked out. The Raiders, who get Devontae Adams, everybody's like, oh, they're going to be the best. Well, the only thing that's great for them is Josh Jacobs has turned back into the Josh Jacobs he was. Darren Waller has been crap, and now he's injured. Hunter Renfrow can't even get a thrown to him because this Hollins guy is taking over his snaps, and Devontae Adams are trying to give him everything. Well, it's just, I don't know. So that's one of my surprises. Some of my other surprises, AFC East is, pretty good. I think Patriots kind of struggling a little bit with their identity crisis. But Dolphins, look pretty good with the offense. I'm surprised there. Jets are a little bit better than I thought they were going to be. Bills, well, the Bills are where I thought they'd be at. AFC North, I kind of felt like, I don't know, I felt like Browns might be at 500. I know they're just one game out, but Bengals are taking the Super Bowl loss curse. Everybody that loses Super Bowl can't do crap. So they're just struggling. AFC South, Colts, nobody's good. Like it's the Titans to lose pretty much. Eagles, did not see Eagles being 7-0. I felt like the offense would be better. I know their defense has been pretty decent. Cowboys with Cooper Rush, that surprised me, him going undefeated. But it makes me think how, if you're an offensive coordinator, and you're just using comfortable play calling and being conservative because you don't want a quarterback, like when a quarterback comes into relief, you don't have him throw the first pass. You run the ball. And you don't have, and usually rookie quarterbacks, you don't have them throw a lot because their IQ and stuff, reading defenses, they just don't know. And I'm like, I know Dak can make some plays, but it's like, why can't you make him a little conservative? And then maybe you're 8-0 now. Giants, big time surprise there. Technically, they are 6-2, and they have only outscored their opponents by 6 points. They've scored 163 and had 157 put up against them. Like, but you're 6 and technically they've won by 1 point a game. Technically, if you average that out. And I know they lost this last game, but it wasn't too bad. NFC West, that whole Kyler Murray drama, like it sucks. I think the surprise is the Seahawks that they're the ones winning that division. 49ers, their defense, well, their greatest opponent is turf.
Yeah.
And they're just, which I agree, turf is dangerous. It's slippery, and it seems like there's a lot of injuries, not just with them. But if their defense can stay healthy, they're going to be fine, especially when Debo comes back, because you have a receiver who can run, you have a running back who can catch.
And a
Garoppolo
running
doesn't have
back who
to
can throw.
exactly. So like 49ers now have a true running back that you don't have to worry about which running back's feeling the best.
Yeah.
Eli Mitchell's supposed to come back, but he'll probably just be a gadget kind of thing. Vikings, might see a 4-3, 5-2. Packers, I don't know what to say. Their defense is horrible, like they mostly are, but it's really shows how much Devontae Adams meant to that offense. I don't know. Lions were like the high scoring team, even though they couldn't win, and now they can't even score. But and the NFC South is, I guess, the biggest surprise is the Buccaneers have really fallen off. Like maybe see them at 5-3, maybe, but not 3-5. Not for the Falcons to be 4-4. So, what are your takes on that? Like, what's your biggest surprises? Got any comments about Russell Wilson?
So I follow a lot of Denver journalists, like the game or the football Denver football team journalists, sports journalists, and everything, and people that live in Denver and sometimes watch the games in person and whatnot. And I did like someone's take, and it was more against. It wasn't like trying to bash either one, but it was more against Russell Wilson than it was Nathaniel Hackett. And the thing was, so what he was saying is that when he was watching the plays and then rewatching them later on, he said that the plays are there. It's there. It's Russell. At the time, he wasn't seeing them, and this was, I don't think it was the Chargers game. I think it was the Colts game. He said the plays were there. He just didn't. He wasn't looking for them. And then you do see, like, that's the thing. It's like you'll see those bursts of Russell Wilson, what made him, a
Yeah.
such a beloved
Well,
quarterback.
let me stop you right there. Like I'll see that. Like he'll scamper off, roll out or something and make a little juke move and then get like 15 yards. They're like there's Russell Wilson. Yeah, he's starting to, he's starting to get in the flow now. And then next 3 plays are all incomplete passes, like bad incomplete passes, way
Yeah.
overhead, way out of bounds, too low. And it's like, okay, y'all just said he's back. And now it's so yeah.
We have when it comes to them, I won't spend like a bunch of time on Denver and everything like that, but when it comes to the team, one person I absolutely trust as of right now is George Patton, the GM. He has been making a lot of good moves. He's made a lot of good moves since he started this. You could maybe say that Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett were not the best moves out there. But he's other than that, he has made some pretty good moves. And one of the things he decided to do was was this year we just traded Bradley Chubb. I hate Bradley Chubb going because he felt like a heart and soul of the team, but we also have a lot of pretty stinking good players that are coming back from injury and that are, that are there to replace Chubb and probably will, especially even a couple of I won't call them freshmen, but a couple of rookies, and we have a really good defense. I mean, I really do love our defense and everything, and whatnot. But he traded Chubb away for a pretty good price, and he ultimately said he did not want to get rid of any of the wide receivers because he feels like we have a really good core trio of wide receivers right now in KJ Hamler, Jerry Judy, and Cortland Sutton. He feels like they're all getting better and that's a future that you can honestly build around. Um, so I do actually trust him when it comes to the building of the team and seeing where we're going. I also very much take into consideration what Shannon Sharp said recently. He went to or he was at you know the remembering the Super Bowl day during the Jets game, and he
Mm-hmm.
said the day after on the Skip and Shannon Undisputed show, and it's just been sticking with me since. He said that he talked to the new owners, so he talked to the Waltons, and he said they're not happy. They want to win, they're not happy, and Skip was trying to prod him a little bit. What does that mean? And he was alluding to it didn't matter who you're thinking of, Russell or Nathaniel Hackett. They're not happy with either one of them, and something will change eventually so that they'll get into the place they want to be. I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett will be the coach after the end of the season. I could see Russell Wilson staying around just a little bit longer. I don't really know who they shop him to. I don't know if they can force him to retire. I mean, maybe it is time. Maybe it's just like, shelf life. If you want to retire and do something else, that's perfectly okay. No one's going to hate you for that. But I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett will be the coach after this year, especially with some pretty good coaches out there already. In both college and NFL who are basically out there for the taking, um, or potentially out there for the taking. So we'll see. But yeah, like I guess one of the biggest surprises is the AFC West. I really thought, like, I'll be honest with you, and I've said it. I think I've said it in this podcast. The AFC West, I thought that was going to be, besides the Bills, I thought maybe the Super Bowl contender would be from this division because it just looked like it was going to be such a great division. And the only thing that could have been an issue was it could have been such a bloodbath in the AFC West, um, that it might be that no one is able to make it there. But other than that, it's been a lackluster conference or division, and
Yeah.
that's kind of surprising. And I think that's got to do with some growing pains, and I think that's got to do with some coaches that probably shouldn't be coaches, or head coaches for their teams, and everything. But we'll definitely see. I hate the fact my biggest gripe about the AFC West is that the Chiefs are still on top. Like, one of these teams needs to get their act together, the Broncos, and dethrone them because I'm tired of watching them win everything. Sometimes by luck, in my opinion, but we're not here to argue that. Um, I think the Eagles probably surprised me the most out of all the teams out there. Like, I thought they were going to be good this year because I like Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. Um, and even when the world seemed against him, and it really did, it felt like the world was against him. I mean, he is just all he's done is shown up every single day and work
Mm-hmm.
hard. And like I liked him in college and everything like that. And I've always rooted for him. But I think they're surprised me the most. Uh, the 49ers, to me, it's not a big surprise that they are in the position they are in. I like the fact they got Christian McCaffrey. But the 49ers, to me, it feels like they're either a player away or just an issue away from honestly being back in the Super Bowl. And that comes from my love of their offense. Like, I want to be honest with you, world out there. I love that offense. I think it's one of the best offenses out there. My only gripe against that offense at times is that Kyle Shanahan, God bless him, because he is such a great coach. The only thing I don't want to ever see him do is get conservative. I want him to put the pedal on the metal and throttle someone with that offense because I know it's possible. Um, Absolutely. I mean, what they did to the Rams this past week. I have a buddy who's a Rams fan, and I was talking to him the whole game, and I was like, It's like it felt like it was over before it started at times, especially when Christian McCaffrey just started going. I mean, like what, 3 touchdowns, one being his own pass touchdown. I like the Cowboys, believe it or not. I think the Cowboys could potentially make a run at the Super Bowl this year. I don't think they're going to make it all the way, but I think they can go pretty late into the pretty late, depending on who they play in the playoffs. I think they can get there, and I really like them. I still feel like it's the Bills to lose, and maybe on the AFC side, it's the Bills to lose. And the biggest shocker of all, maybe it's Miami's to lose, because Miami seems to be catching some steam. I think to fizzle out after a while, especially if they don't have any more like horrible injuries like with Tua.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the idea of a Bills Eagles Super Bowl this year, just for the chaos, and if the Eagles can maintain. So I would put my top 2 contenders right now in the NFC. Probably I think, or I'll do the top 3. Um, Eagles currently, 49ers, and then Cowboys. And the AFC, I would put Bills, unfortunately, the Chiefs. No, I would put Bills, Miami, and then the Chiefs, and everything. And I think it also depends, too, on who gets Odell Beckham Jr. I know that sounds weird, but I think it does depend there on who manages to land him and everything. So, but yeah, that's my Super Bowl, and it's been kind of a fun year for the NFL.
Yeah. So I have a couple other things before we move in this segment. This was back on October 9th. Aaron Rodgers says Aaron Rodgers has thrown for over 500 touchdowns in his career. Mercedes Lewis, who was the tight end, he threw a touchdown to, is the only former first round pick to ever catch a touchdown pass from Rodgers. So out of all the people he's thrown to that have been great, from the Greg Jennings, Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, like I remember how Randall Cobb was in college coming out of Kentucky, and you would think with him, he probably was a first round pick, but wasn't. It's crazy to think that was just to think about that stat. But yeah, I don't know. I think probably with what you said, the Bills to lose. I don't know where. Yeah, that's my favorite right now. I still want to put faith. I know it's kind of being the home team, but I really think that it's still 49ers, especially getting McCaffrey. If some of their secondary and linebackers can get healthy, or just the whole defense in general, like Bosa was leading the league in sacks, and he missed a game, and you think he's still tied or whatever. So
Yeah, that defense is scary good if it stays healthy.
yeah. So well, um, so before we'll move on here in a second, but right now, all you viewers, we will be back after this episode or after this commercial. All right, guys, we are back for our second segment. We are going to stick on the football path here. We're going to talk about some college football, probably more based on the SEC and that old Southeastern Conference. First off, I meant to do this before we went to the break. Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about it real quick. Major League Baseball. Ryan, you and I talked about this. They do a thing called a shift. And for all you fans that don't understand what the shift is, if I'm a left-handed batter What they do is they take the third baseman, scoot him in between second and third. They take the shortstop, move him to the second baseman's position. The second baseman, scoot him in between first and second, kind of in the outfield. They move the left fielder over to center field. They move the center fielder over a little bit because more or less left-handers pull the ball and hit it towards that side of the field. They're wanting to ban this next year in Major League Baseball, so it will be illegal to do. My thought is it shouldn't be. You should have your batters learn how to hit. There was a movie called Major League Back to the Minors. It was a little cheap movie with Scott Bakula. It had some of the guys like Serrano and some of them from the Major League movies in there. And there was a guy called Downtown Anderson. He could pull the ball. They called him a pure hitter because he could pull the ball and hit home runs. And they were moving him up the minor leagues because they wanted him to play with the Twins. And Scott Bakula's character said he's not ready. They will figure him out. And he wanted him to be able to hit the ball into opposite field or sacrifice. He goes, no, I'm a home run hitter. Well, he gets to the Twins. He can't hit. So that messes up his confidence and stuff. And so he kind of has a little pride moment and goes back to Scott Bakula and says, teach me. So he learns how to be a team player. He learns how to sacrifice the ball and hit it to right field and things like that. And I feel like that's great. If a hitter can sit there and go, I'm going to hit this ball down this line. I'm going to hit this ball in left center field and pull a double. I think that's great. So by helping out left-handers to always pull the ball and say, you know what, I want to teach you to be able to hit this in opposite field where there's only two people. And if you hit it over one, now it's just one person guarding a whole left field. Like, what are your thoughts on that? I know you didn't really know much about it, but what's your thoughts on it, Ryan?
It's strategy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in every single sport.
Well, let's say
and
football.
I said this,
if you're a running base team, what are you going to do?
You're going to stack the box.
Stack the box.
If you're a defense. Yeah.
If you pass the thing, what are you going to do? You're going to drop 8 back.
Yeah.
And what do you do in basketball? You double team the guy who's the better player.
And that's the thing. It's like, if you're a running base team in football and, someone's stacking the box against you, then what do you, one of the strategies, there's a strategy to overcome that strategy, and that is a play action pass. Catch them off guard.
Because now you can have 3 or 4 receivers being guarded by 3.
Yeah. And so, that means that, in baseball, it's like, well, this is not, it's fair. It's completely fair. It's just as fair as batters legally, and I do say legally, as batters legally modifying their bats in such a way that it makes it a lot easier to hit a home run. That's a strategy, by what is it? They shave it or something like that, but they don't shave it. A legal bat, it's not super shaved. It's it's perfectly done and everything. That's completely fair. That's a part of the strategy of the game, because you want to give yourself, without cheating, the best chance to win. And it's like, okay, well, I'm stuck in this specific spot. I don't think that takes away from the game. The game will be fun because you have to overcome. You have to watch batters, you have to watch teams overcome the adversity that's been placed in front of them and everything. And maybe it's a little bit easier, in ways to overcome the adversity of a shifted field.
Yeah.
But it's a bit ridiculous to me to be like, we're banning this. There's no reason to ban it. And this is what I said before the podcast started. Baseball, you continuously find ways to get in your own way to make the game less fun, and that's ridiculous. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just because you're America's pastime, and everyone, you're probably, in many ways, throughout history, you've been the most beloved sport in one way or another. Doesn't mean that you have to stick to some kind of classy set of rules that you could be fun. You can be fun. It's possible to be fun. And everyone will have a good time watching you, and everyone will want to play you more than they want to play other sports like basketball and football, which do allow for more fun.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna move back into the football. Like, I just want to get that off. I meant to talk about it before we got on our commercial break. All right, SEC football current standings right now: Alabama and LSU and Mississippi. Ole Miss are at 4-1. In that order from first, second, and third. Mississippi State's 2-3. These are also conference records, but Arkansas's 2-3. A&M is 1-4, which we talked about it a couple weeks ago. That's the more overrated team. We talked about that, and where are they at? 1-4. Auburn 1-4. SEC East only undefeateds. Georgia's at 5-0. Tennessee 4-0. Missouri, and see, everybody else got a losing record. Missouri 2-3. South Carolina 2-3. Kentucky, who is supposed to be, well, we got the top, what, maybe even the top quarterback in the league, and old Levi's down there. They're 2-3. Florida, who's supposed to be top dog, is 1-4, and then poor Vanderbilt, who was like 2-0, and they're like, oh, they're going to wreck some. Yeah, they reckon, all right. They're wrecking so bad where the Tennessee fans are trying to checker their stadium, which they usually have 80 to 20% Tennessee fans, the Vanderbilt fans. I would love it if that stadium is checkered, which it could pull off. So real quick, like, this is probably going to be, I feel like you and I are going to be more one-sided with this because we're fixing to get into talking about the college football playoff. But I am so stinking excited. I know the next 4 weeks could be crap. I know everything could go down the drain. But super excited that my Tennessee Volunteers are #1 in the nation. And the AP poll, or whatever poll it is, are actually tied #2 because they have more first place votes than Ohio State. When 8 weeks ago, we were unranked. And people said they are not going to live up to the hype. They're going to have a sophomore slump. People are going to figure out Hendon Hooker. Brew McCoy, that transfer from USC, isn't going to be able to do anything. The defense is still crap. Josh Heupel's offense, whatever. Now, again, anything can happen in the next 4 weeks. It's just the first week. But stats go on. Everybody's made it to at least the top 3, if not a championship or runner-up, since 2014. The only one was the very first one when Mississippi State and Dak Prescott started, but that season they had a great year leading up, and then they started hitting some powerhouse teams. So I'm just going to kind of talk about certain things here and there. Again, probably going to seem one-sided, but I'm just happy about this. They've compared Tennessee's offense and some of their defense to Joe Burrow and LSU with points per game, opponents' points per game. Tennessee's defense is actually a point better than LSU's was. They're a whole point better on offensive points per games. They're about the same on yards per play. LSU did get 15 more yards per play, but we know what happened with LSU that year. The other thing was they were taking everybody's schedules and seeing how many people could go at the same record of that team's schedule. So like Ole Miss, they've went 8-1 with their schedule. Only 50, well, they said 58% of the rest of the college teams could go 8-1 also. Michigan, 8-0. 30% of the teams would have that same win-loss record. Everybody is in double digits. Ohio State, who is 8-0, they're at 18%. Tennessee, with their strength of record, only 8% of the nation could go 8-0 also. I've just been seeing all these stats and stuff. Like, last time Tennessee was #1 ranked in week 8 was 1998. And they went to play an undefeated team, which was Arkansas, and the whole fumble. And we know how that turned out. Now, that was more like a miracle kind of thing, but hey, they pulled that out, went undefeated, and won the championship. But what are they fixing to do this weekend? They're not playing at home against Georgia like they did Arkansas, but they're playing undefeated Georgia team, and it's another highly ranked Georgia team, just like Arkansas was. That was a top game back then. Another stat I saw: Kirby Smart is 1-9 when allowing opponents to score 30 points. You know that. Like it's just stats like that I've seen. I've looked at like the strength of schedule and stuff, where Alabama's number 1, Tennessee's number 3, but jumping into the college football playoff, kind of winging in there. I'm just going to start top 10. Whenever I saw
the top
LSU
10
there,
no, I just no.
no, listen, when I saw them there, I thought if Tennessee is not number 1, then this is a bunch of crap, because the fact that they blew them out, and you're saying that they are number 10. 3 weeks ago, they were number 25.
I cannot fathom at all why LSU is a top 10 team. I cannot fathom.
Because your coach is Brian Kelly, and the fact that Jalen Daniels, whatever his name is, because he's thrown 11 touchdowns in 3 games or some crap. And so we're going to say, oh, that's worth the bet. Just like Southern California at number 9. Your coach is Lincoln Riley. Your guy, Caleb Williams, the only reason why he's on the radar is because your coach is Lincoln Riley. Nobody knew who Caleb Williams was besides his third girlfriend and his mom.
Do I think LSU is a bad team? I actually don't think they're a bad team. But the problem that I have, and this is not with every single team, like it feels like this feels like a year in which, like, it's the same thing happening over and over again, except you just put a different team at the top at times. This year it's Tennessee. So I'm not going to take anything away from Tennessee. They have outscored all their opponents. They have, to me, you play and win, even if you play and beat an Alabama team, any Alabama team coached by Nick Saban, who comes roaring back at you, I don't know. Like, there's something there.
Well,
like,
my thing is,
I don't think you could take away from that.
Even if you're. Go ahead.
Well, I'm complimenting them and everything.
Yeah. Well, the offense hasn't been slowed down at all.
Yeah.
The defense has stepped up when needed.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. Like, and I'll get into something else here in a minute, but like Oregon, but Georgia's the only team that they play and they look like crap. But my thing is, okay, so who else have they played? TCU. Now TCU, I think they should have been higher, but I think some of it is they struggled against some teams, and so they kind of looked at it. Bama is 7-1, and they're at 6, but then Michigan is above Bama, and I'm like, okay, but then Clemson's up here. Well, Clemson's supposed to be rebuilding, which is fine. Dabo could be doing great there, but who has Clemson played? It seems like all their games are the 11 o'clock games.
Yeah.
They were struggling to get someone last week or weekend before.
They struggled against Syracuse 2 weeks ago.
That's who it was. And now Syracuse.
And Syracuse goes off and just gets demolished by Notre Dame. And then, they went to they played Wake Forest into overtime in a game they should have probably arguably lost. But just, things went in their favor, which that happens in football, so it can't super take away from them on that. But I mean, that Wake Forest team, their quarterback was still kind of battling back from an injury. So I mean, it's just, I'm not a fan of Clemson this year. In fact, I was talking to someone on Twitter about it because I retweeted another person's tweet and said one of these things, because it was like a picture of the college football playoffs as it was right now. It was Tennessee, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and Alabama. And I said, one of these things is not like the other, and it's Clemson. It's, and then someone messaged me, and we had a good conversation for like the little bit we had. I forgot to message him back. But I told him, I was like, look, I'm just not a fan of the resume. And I'm really like, I'll tell you another team's resume I'm not a super big fan of. And that's Georgia. Like, and that's the thing is like, that's what I was kind of getting at here a moment ago was the rest of the SEC, this year. I'm not saying SEC is having a down year. I don't really think that at all.
Okay.
Because I still think it's like the conference. Like I often think it's the conference. But I mean, if you look at the rest of these teams, including my beloved Razorbacks, they're all just so weird. They're
Yeah.
all so weird.
Well,
You look at, I don't think Ole Miss is that good of a football team. I'm going to be honest with you. Ole Miss, they had a super easy schedule. They ran into a confident LSU team and got off track in their home stadium, and it just became a buzzsaw
yeah.
from there. Then they go and they struggle against Texas A&M for a lot of the game and everything. And that's a team that's lost confidence. And at the same time, like, and I understand, like, looking at like Arkansas's biggest issue is Arkansas and the defense. The defense is just horrible. And I feel the same way about Ole Miss's defense. Ole
Yeah.
Miss's defense is very bad. They both have explosive offenses that can outscore most opponents. Absolutely. But that it bothers me. I say all this because it very much bothers me that LSU is sitting at number 10. Like I cannot stop thinking about this. And the only thing that I can think of is, yes, it's because it's Brian Kelly, maybe because it's LSU, and maybe more, which I agree with a lot of people that have been saying this. This is all just to give Alabama more of a resume.
Yeah.
Because they have a top 10 win in Baton Rouge, night game. Is it a night game?
I'm not sure.
It doesn't matter. It'll be in Baton Rouge.
Probably because Tennessee is a 2:30 game, and they should be the night game.
Yeah, and it's just it's a game that.
So let's talk
it'll
about
Alabama's
Georgia.
resume.
Let's talk about Georgia. So I'm even going to talk about previous ranking, where they're at in the college football ranking, since that's what we go by from here on out. Oregon was 8 then, they're 8 now. Georgia dominated them 49-3. And I understand teams can change. They find out who their personality is, and they go from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Georgia played Samford, beat them 33-0. And I get it. Second strings and third string people play. But I really felt like that should have been a 52-0 game. Just me. I don't know. Georgia plays South Carolina, dominates them, which South Carolina was supposed to be on a comeback. Well, then they struggle against Kent State. 39-22. You gave up 22 points to Kent State. Well, guess what? You gave up 22 points the next week to Missouri and won 26-22. I think that was the week also when Alabama jumped them because they struggled so much. If not, it was the week before.
Yeah.
But then they play Auburn, and everybody thought, oh, they're back 42-10. But now we see where Auburn's at. They're not. Well, then they play Vanderbilt, and people are like, defense looks dominant. Again, do I need to repeat who they played? Vanderbilt. Let me say it again for people in the Trinidad and Germany and stuff. If you don't know, look up Vanderbilt University. Okay, please look that up, and you will know what I'm talking about. Anyways, then they play Florida. Florida, 1 week, they look dominant with that quarterback they have, and then
Florida's
next week they don't.
That's another one of those teams.
Yeah.
Maybe they're better than their losses make them look.
Maybe.
But at the same time, it's like, what are you?
But they're 42, 142-20 then. So think about this. They have one win versus a top 10 team. Everybody else is a average or worse SEC team, and then they struggled against a Kent State team. Samford, yeah, shut them out. Okay. But they also shut out Vanderbilt. So what can you say about that? Now, Mississippi State, was in the top 25 at one point, so that could be an interesting game a couple weeks from now. Kentucky was ranked until they decided to talk trash about Tennessee and that they were the better team. Well, okay. And then Georgia will play Georgia Tech, and I'm sure Georgia will win that game. But I'm going to be looking for stuff from the house this weekend. I don't think there's any way I can get out of it, but my eyes are going to be glued from 2:29:59 seconds. And I really feel as confident as I did with the Alabama game with this game going on. I know they're 8-point underdogs,
I don't understand.
and they are the number one team, and Georgia's now the number 3. I would guess Georgia needs to be like, oh, now we've dropped 2 spots according to this stupid football playoff. They might have a little bite, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm super excited about this game. Georgia needs this game more than Tennessee. Unless Tennessee really gets dominated, or Tennessee plays Vanderbilt and Vanderbilt spanks that, but Tennessee can lose this game and win out because they have Missouri, should be easy win. South Carolina could be exciting, and then Vanderbilt. Definitely 2 easy wins with a third one, because I don't see South Carolina shutting them down. I see South Carolina being another Florida or Ball State is what I really see. But they could win out, and not make it to the SEC championship and still be in the top 4. So before I get into that, go to number 2. Oh, CJ Stroud and his Ohio State Buckeyes. They struggled against Notre Dame. Didn't think they were going to beat Notre Dame. 21-10. Offense looked great, they said. Then they played Arkansas State. I'll go back 2 years ago from our podcast I was recently listening to. I was wrong. I really thought, I didn't think he'd have them there like Gus Malzahn and them, but I thought Butch Jones was going to be better. Like, I really did. Ohio State won 77-21 against Toledo. Have we seen their record? Everybody thought this was a great win, 52-21 over Wisconsin. Well, where's Wisconsin at now? 49-10 over Rutgers. 49-20 over Michigan State. Not the same Michigan State team that we've seen. 54-10 over Iowa. Again, not the team that we've seen. This week, God, I was hoping for it. They struggled until the last 7 minutes of the ball game against Penn State. And then the score, 44-31, looks like they blew them out.
Yeah.
They scored 21 points like in 3 minutes. And it's like,
I'd like to think that the best team in the Big Ten, the Big Ten right now, is probably Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, they're not a flashy team by any stretch, but they're a team that wears you out. But I mean, hey, and I know every Saturday can be different. That's one thing I'm having to continuously tell myself. Every Saturday is a different Saturday. Every Saturday is a different Saturday. But I mean, Michigan destroyed Penn State.
Yeah.
They destroyed Penn State, and Ohio State struggled against them. I need to see real quick who's on the.
Ohio State's fixing to play Northwestern. They're fixing to play Indiana. Then Maryland. Maryland has Tagovailoa's brother, but Maryland's still not elite. And then they finish out with the big dance against Michigan. Now, it's at Ohio State, but it's going to be, if they both win out, it will be a top 5 matchup, and the winner will be in the college football playoff.
There's one team, weirdly enough, I wish they were playing this year, but they're not, unless something happens. I mean, I guess something strange could happen, but I think a big test, if they didn't play Michigan, could be Illinois.
Yeah,
because their defense is pretty stinking good. Well, and and that's the thing is these high-powered offenses that can have their way with bad defenses. What happens when they come up against these buzzsaw defenses? And I think Michigan's probably better defensively than they are offensively. Yeah. It seems that way anyway. So, and where are they playing it? Are they playing it in Michigan this year, or is that a neutral site?
It's Ohio State.
That might be a factor, but
because of that Michigan last year.
I mean, they have one thing I want to take away from them is they have a good wide receiver core.
So Ohio State?
Yeah.
Well, they have Marvin Harrison Jr. So
yeah, it's a pretty good one.
But that's all they talk about, really.
Yeah, just like Tennessee's in Hyatt. Is it Hyatt? Is that his name?
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt. But here's the thing.
What's his classification?
I want to say sophomore, but I might be wrong. Let me look. Junior. I was wrong.
Okay, so he's probably gone after this year.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
don't know.
I don't know either.
Nobody's really talked about that.
Here's I don't really want to I don't want to veer off too much into this and everything. Like this, I think it's kind of a fun conversation. Like, you, the only team so far that has managed to not be a flash in the pan when it comes to SEC dominance is Alabama, just because of who Nick Saban is. And my only question about Tennessee is if Heupel stays, I'm not worried about him continuing success. They might have a down year, and by down year,
Like a
like they
three
might
loss year.
like a dip eventually, just because it looks. I think their team's just a little bit older, and everything. And then
Well,
you'll
but the
definitely,
team's really not because the fact that he's recruited well the last year,
yeah,
and they lost a lot of younger. Now they did lose a lot of younger ones
yeah.
after Pruitt and all the whole transfer portal. But the thing is, they do have Hendon Hooker and stuff. But that
Your biggest
Milton,
issue next year will be whoever's playing quarterback, and
no,
that'll just
well,
be well. What I'm saying there is like it's just be them acclimating it to the being the starter,
but the thing
which I'm
is,
not even saying that's a that
he
makes them
was the
bad.
starter.
Yeah.
He was the starter, got hurt. Hendon Hooker stepped in, and Hendon Hooker's just been great. But that means he'll be a graduate just like Hooker is, and he can just sit there and talk game film because he'll have 2 years of the system that he's learned. So and then that Nico guy will come in the next year.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to is like, I'm not worried about them
Well,
really.
here, so let me talk about that real quick, and then we'll go into some more with this. So, like, talking about Tennessee, like I saw a stat today. It said Alabama has given up the least amount of touchdowns this year. They've given up 15 touchdowns.
And like half of them were to Tennessee.
7 of them were Tennessee. But Tennessee's lowest games, they scored 38 against Florida, and they scored 34 against Pittsburgh in an overtime game. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's my thing about that. They had lost Cedric Tillman, who was their best receiver in the Ball State game. He just came back for Kentucky. So I could see why, because they had to find an identity with that. But they win 59-10 over Ball State, 34-27 over Pittsburgh. And, Pittsburgh was ranked at that time. Akron, 63-6.
Yeah, I'm looking at there.
Florida was ranked at the time. It was 38-3. Now, score's a lot closer than it should have been just because they got an onside kick. They got some stupid stuff. They had to throw a deep pass. They got intercepted at the end. Game should have been put away a long time. Then the only game I was worried about was them going to LSU when LSU was 15th. They went to LSU and dominated them. Never had a chance. And then after that, I was never scared. Go to Alabama. They had Alabama up 21, or they were up 21-7 on Bama. Probably could have put it away a couple of times. They were down to Alabama because the bad handoff where Hooker thought the running back was taking it. Running back thought Hooker scoop and score, and I was like, there it is. That broke it. We're done. And then I was worried about Bama coming down. They're going to waste too much time, kick a field goal. Well, missed the field goal, and then Hendon Hooker said, here, hold my drink, and went 40-something yards, whatever it was, like in 10 seconds, and then boom, kicked the field goal. That was partially blocked, by the way. Partially blocked and made it through a field goal.
Yeah, because it looked like a knuckleball.
Yeah, and rest is history there. Well, then they play Tennessee Martin. Tennessee Martin scores a couple right there at the end, but they hung 65 on them. And then Kentucky, who's supposed to have one of the top draft picks, and their running back is a bruiser and can't be tackled, and they miss that extra point and they don't even score again. And then the guy gets tackled like crazy. But
man, I didn't watch that game because was that going? That might have been going on during the Razorback game where I was watching a different game. Period. But no, that was a night game. So I didn't watch much of that game at all. I don't think I watched it at all. I think I was watching that game just period. Because like when I started it, or when I finished the game, and then it looked like it was already out of hand, and I was like, I'm not gonna bother with this. But the people that like they weren't, particularly for either team that were watching it and were talking about it, talked about how Kentucky just like, and they weren't taken away from Tennessee and how good Tennessee was, but it was just like Kentucky just did not. They were frustrated with how Kentucky was managing that game. Period. It's like, kind of getting mad at Start Mark Stoops. It's like you have this supposed, you know, draft like high draft eligible quarterback, and you have this, you're supposed to be taking the next step, and it just looked like they didn't even know anything about a next step during that game and whatnot. So there was a lot of people frustrated about that. I don't know. I didn't watch the game, but again, like that's the thing is like, you have a high powered offense like Tennessee, and if you're supposed to be a high powered offense like Kentucky was supposed to be, then you got to score points. And if you don't score points, you can't win the game.
Yeah.
And that's
like what Hyatt's done, with 4 more games left, he's already broke the Tennessee's receiving touchdown record. With 14, it was 13. But like Hendon Hooker has put up what in just his career at Tennessee, 50 something touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And the interception against Alabama really wasn't his fault.
I have an interesting conversation topic about one Hendon Hooker. It's been thrown around, and not as an against him kind of thing, but just the fact how old he is. How much is that playing into what they've been able to do?
It's like I said about Milton, though. Like he's graduating with his master's, so he's already graduated college, and he can just talk about game film and stuff like that. So I'm sure it's benefiting him a lot. But the thing is, it's like he's going to be smarter and stuff like that. But then again, if you're a great defensive coach, like people say, they were talking about last night. Well, all this is a scheme. Heupel's offense is just a scheme. You can shut it down.
Well, duh.
All he is a pass guy, but his team is balanced. They said that's the scary thing about it. People don't understand. Just because Jalen Wright and Jabari Small don't run for 100 yards, just the one guy. Like, looking at the stats, Jalen Wright, 478 yards. Jabari Small, 475. And then Hendon Hooker, 338. And then every once in a while, Dylan Sampson comes in and bruises. But Jabari Small has a couple of he has 8 touchdowns rushing. But their offense is so stinking balanced.
Yeah, that's such a dumb argument, though. Anyone says that it's just a scheme. It's just a scheme. Yeah, duh. Every offense is a scheme. It's not their fault that they're good at it. Well, it is their fault they're good at it, but it's not their fault you're not good enough to figure it out. Like, figure it out. I have not watched a lot of Tennessee games.
But like Jalen Hyatt is technically the 3rd best receiver on that team because Cedric Tillman is number 1. Brew McCoy, the USC transfer, is number 2, and Hyatt's number 3.
Yeah. But like, if I haven't watched a lot of Tennessee games, but I'm thinking, if you want to slow down their offense, probably one of the best things you can do is, contain Hendon Hooker more. Because I mean, like, how many I've seen so many like out of game plays where he gets into scramble mode, and I don't know how much he scrambles, but he gets into scramble mode when he finds himself in a pickle, and he goes for multiple yardage or touchdowns that he maybe shouldn't have had, but he was able to because he was able to get out of the pocket and everything.
Yeah.
Like I said, like, if you want to beat him, if you want to beat Tennessee, beat their scheme. That's what you have to do. You have to scheme against them. So like, of course it's beatable. Every single offense is beatable. There's not an offense out there that's unbeatable.
Well, they're Princeton Fant, they're tight end. He's thrown a pass. He's done some fullback running. Like he's a key guy, but they've got some tight ends coming up. That Ramel Keaton, who caught like this great fingertip catch in the Pittsburgh game, I believe. He's a senior, so he's fixing to move on. Brew McCoy, he's a junior. I don't think since he hasn't been like the main guy, unless he just wants to leave, I could see him, going somewhere just because, I just see him staying. Um, but like, Hendon Hooker, he'll probably get drafted somewhere probably. But Cedric Tillman, he's a senior too. He went for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns last year. So he was one from tying the record last year. Tillman was. I said he's gotten hurt, but he came back and uh, he had 4 catches for 22 yards against Kentucky. He had 9 catches for 162 against Pitt. It was the Akron game he got hurt, but so they were kind of like, I guess, one dimension because they're trying to really focus on him. And Hyatt, you can say, well, he had 6 for 207, 7 for 174, and 5 for 138, and it has 9 touchdowns just in that span, not including the 2 he had against LSU. But there's this little speedy guy named Squirrel White, 5'10" freshman who they are very excited about for him to get his reps. And plus, this Carnell Tate or whatever guy they're looking at, they said there's some talent coming in at receiver and running back. So
I've said this elsewhere, podcast people. The keys to the game for Georgia, in my opinion, are Brock Bowers and their defense. If their defense can hold up, I think they can. I think they have a real shot of winning the game. Now, is it an 8-point to 11-point shot? I don't like that. I just don't like that at all. But I think that's their best bet. If Tennessee can contain Brock Bowers, I don't think they'll have to worry about much else on their offense, to be truthfully honest with you. And I wonder this at times when I think about Georgia's offense. I wonder if one of their biggest issues, and I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I want to make that very clear. He's been a very good quarterback and he led them to a national championship last year. But just because you lead someone to a national championship, Alabama, does not mean that you get to be the quarterback all the time if someone else is behind you that is potentially better than you. And I'm not so sold. I like him as a person. He seems like a good guy, but I'm not so sold on Stetson Bennett as the quarterback for Georgia. And I wonder if eventually that will catch up to Georgia and everything. And I wonder if that catching up to Georgia is going to be this week. Because, Tennessee, one thing, again, I haven't watched a lot of Tennessee games, but I do know this. I have seen plenty of times through tweets and through other, like sometimes seeing some stuff, Tennessee's defensive line and linebackers will come after you. I think what people, y'all's maybe the weakest part of y'all's second, or the weakest part is maybe y'all's secondary. Is that a fair statement? If you had to, like, not to put the weakest link, but it's like what could be the most improved would be maybe the secondary for Tennessee.
I would say yes, but that's mainly because they're lack of depth. Well, their lack of depth because of injuries.
Yeah, I understand that too well.
Yeah, and so like that's, but
I mean, that's the thing is like their linebackers and defensive line seems like it's pretty good. So
because they've been blitzing a lot. I think they're one of the highest blitzing teams in the SEC.
Man, wouldn't that be nice to have a high blitzing SEC team defense that went after the quarterback when they should go after the quarterback and not let him sit in the pocket all day and throw wherever he wants to throw to? I'm not talking about anybody in specific, Arkansas. I was like the whole Mississippi State game, Will Rogers doesn't get touched once. That's baffles me. But I like Tennessee in this game, and I like it at Georgia, and everything. I just don't see what Vegas sees in putting Georgia as a two touchdown lead at times, the 11-point lead. I think it's gone down to 8 points per ESPN. That's what I saw last. I still don't really see that. Like I could see like 1.3 point favorites. Right, I get that.
Somebody was talking to me about, or I heard them saying something about in the Kentucky game, talking about Um, the I think they were just talking about passing yards, I guess. I don't think it was total yards, but passing yards allowed by Tennessee. And they were talking about how out of 131 teams, Arkansas was 130. Well, that's true. Looking at the stats now, here's the bottom. 131 is Ohio, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Tennessee. So Tennessee moved up 3 spots with that Kentucky game, which they dominated. Okay. They're giving up 300 yards per game. They're only giving up 80 rushing yards. So it seems like most running backs are like Alabama running back got a lot of yards. I think there's another guy who got like 100 yards against him, but they don't get the big runs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, what usually happens, Ryan? You're a smart guy. What happens when your team gets down a lot? What do you tend to want to do to get back in the game?
Pass the ball.
You want to pass the ball. So when Tennessee is up 21 to zip on you real quick, or you're like Alabama and you start going away from your run, you start passing because you want to stay up and try to. So my thing is, of course, Tennessee's going to have a lot of passing yards against them, especially if you got a good coach that goes, oh, they technically only have 4 cornerbacks or 4 defensive backs left because 5 of them are injured. Let me go after these freshmen. What do you think is going to happen? Because this past week, they had 2 guys come back from injury, and then that McCullough guy who they could never prove they got in some bar fight or something, he came back from suspension. And they intercept the best quarterback in the SEC, according to some people, 3 times. And should have had a pick 6. So
I want to put this on record. And maybe it's because I haven't watched a lot of him at all, but from last year to this year, he's a good guy. I'm not going to take away from him. He seems like a good guy and everything. Kentucky really loves him, but I don't know. I don't know what the world is that we're sitting here saying Will Levis is like top 5 quarterback in the SEC. I'm sorry, but I don't see it. Like, and I'm not going to say in particular order top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC, but I'm going to give you my top 5. Like, and this is not any particular order. I think they can move around as much as we want to. Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young. Actually, I would take Bryce Young as my number 1. I just love the way that kid plays football. But Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young, Will Rogers, KJ Jefferson, and maybe LSU's quarterback. I think the guy's not a bad quarterback at all over there, but Will Levis, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. He makes more mistakes than he does anything else. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like maybe they see a diamond in the rough that makes him a high draft pick, but it just does not make sense to me.
well, I get it. Some people didn't really know who Patrick Mahomes was, and he's one of the most electrifying people. I get it. Joe Montana wasn't high. Tom Brady wasn't high. But like,
actually, no, I'll trade the LSU quarterback for Stetson Bennett because Stetson Bennett at least works in the system really well for the most part.
I don't remember if the Kentucky, I think it was a running touchdown. So he was 13-5 with touchdowns to interceptions before. He's still only completing 68%, which is better than last year, but he's more than halfway during the season. He only has half the touchdowns he had last year. So he might not even eclipse the touchdowns he had. He might not even eclipse the yards he had. And maybe that's because of the Tennessee game, but like against Mississippi State, 1-1 for touchdowns, interceptions. Ole Miss, he was 2-0, but they got beat. 4-0 and then 2-2 against Youngstown State. Like, what were you doing that you threw 2 interceptions to Youngstown? You still completed 77% of your passes,
He is an interception machine.
but he threw
He was last
377
year.
yards.
That's the thing too. He was
Yeah,
last
threw
year.
13 last year.
And like that's that all I ever think about when I think about him is like, his interceptions. Because he's got just enough that makes me wonder about him and does make me think he can't get to the big game. Those other guys, and like unfortunately, the worst team out of the teams that I just put is Arkansas because of just like their whole, how their defense has been. But every single one of those guys has big game potential. Like, and they've shown it at various times. Especially Hendon Hooker this year with Alabama, but Bryce Young last year, plenty of times. Stetson Bennett last year in the Alabama Georgia national championship game, and then various times with when Arkansas gets down, no matter who they play, if KJ Jefferson's on the field, you can expect like at some point or another he's going to change, like he's going to turn the game or do his best to turn the game into their favor, and they've done that.
Well,
So I
and
like all these quarterbacks,
and
but
Hendon
just
Hooker
Will Levis
has,
is just not
like,
I'm not a fan.
there's sometimes, like watching Peyton Manning or things like that. Like, I've never felt nervous about Hendon Hooker. It seems like he always makes the right throw. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that pass that he threw to Jalen Hyatt in that stream in between the defenses on Alabama, and he runs 70 something yards. Like, I just knew it was going to, I didn't know it was going to be that kind of pass, but it was a great pass. He sees everybody when they're open, and it's just crazy. But
there's only been one pass, and it's because again, broken record, but I don't watch a lot of Tennessee games just because of the schedule of the Razorback games and everything. But early on in the year when they played Ball State, so I'm not going to heavily criticize this because it's the first game of the year, and I don't expect anyone to be playing their best game at the very first game of the year. But there was one pass, just one, that if it had been this much lower, or if the guy got a little bit more of a jump on it, it would have gone for a pick six. It did not go for a pick six. It went for a touchdown in Tennessee's favor instead. That was the only pass that I have seen all year. And that's it. And like what he hasn't, when was the last time he threw an interception?
Bama.
Bama.
But I
And
think that was because
it was a tip ball, wasn't it? I
that,
don't know. I wasn't watching
or
the
it
game.
was the receiver ran the wrong route or something. I don't know. I wouldn't consider it being his fault,
but that was the only time I was like, ooh, I don't know about that, was the Ball State game. And but I didn't even, you can't criticize it too much because it's like it's the first game of the year, and I expect some rust, no matter who you are. And sure enough, he's been playing pretty well since. And I was earlier during this podcast, I was on Twitter, and one of the people that was trending at the time was Josh Heupel. So I hit the button, or I hit his name just to see what they were saying. I don't know what to take about this. Take this however you want to take it, whoever you are listening to this, whenever you are listening to this. But one of the things one of the people said, if I can find it again, I might not be able to find it again. No, this is what one of the people said. This is the loosest Josh Heupel has been during a Vol call show. This was 3 hours ago. This is the loosest Josh Heupel has been during a Vol call show in his 2 years at Tennessee. And in 3 days, he coaches the biggest game of his life. That's all I'm going to say.
I saw a picture of him being interviewed last night, and it said, "This looks like a guy who is not scared of anybody this Saturday."
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Now, I want to bring this up since we're talking about this, and it feels like we jump a lot. Do you think the NFL entertains him, or do you think he entertains the NFL this year? What do you think?
I really don't.
And Romo said it, and I liked it. I didn't like it, like he's gonna leave, but Romo said it, and I thought, I didn't think about that.
Because here's my thing: they gave him a lot of money to be there, but for him to turn a program around in year two, because they should have went 8-5 last year, or whatever the record should have been, because they got screwed on that goal line play against Georgia Tech or Iowa, whoever the crap they played
Yeah.
in the bowl game. But to do what he's done in year two, to get the recruits that he's getting, to come back to Tennessee, to sell out, to have record-breaking decibel levels, to possibly not be ranked 8 weeks ago, to be number one, to possibly be playing for the college football playoff or championship after this Saturday, and possibly your quarterback is going to be the Heisman winner after this Saturday, when people didn't even give him any recognition until 2 weeks ago. You know, Tennessee will not let him leave. They will throw him money like they did Rick Barnes when he was supposed to be going to UCLA. They will throw money to him like they did to Vitello. And I think he loves it too much in college. I don't think, because though it's weird, in NFL, too many people try too many things to try to screw you. Like Chip Kelly didn't work. Nick Saban, his pound and ground didn't work. And I feel like you have to evolve. And I think Heupel, how he spreads the field and stuff, I think it could work, but eventually people are going to change. Just like Kaepernick. Kaepernick was great, and then that whole read option, people stopped it, and people stopped the whole Wildcat thing when that started becoming popular in NFL. And after 2 years, Heupel's offense might just be average, and you can't recruit. That's
Yeah.
my thing. Like Nick Saban, he can't recruit. He has to develop the talent he has and hope that people can draft. And if Heupel can't do that, then like if he won a national title or something, then sure. But even where he's at right now, like I he should win 3 of his next 4, in all honesty. And even if he does that, and he's 11-1 going into the college football playoff or a bowl game, you can't tell me Tennessee can't go. He's done too much. We
Yeah.
cannot let him go.
I
Like I know, like anybody out there is going to go try to either pull him for an offensive coordinator or even a head coaching job, just because.
I would think head coaching job.
But
I
I don't
would think
know.
the way he just runs the ship. Because I mean, like, you know, you take teams like, the best part about Heupel is just his experience and doing what he's doing and everything like that. I like that a lot about him. A great coach. Be one person I like to follow no matter where he's at over the next however long he's a coach for, and everything. But you have like these teams that just suffered so much, and a coach comes in and just completely rights the ship. I wish it could have happened with Arkansas, year 2, year 3, where, they finally got things on track. I think they had a chance this year, but their defense just something happened. I don't know what it is. I hope it's a big change next year. But Heupel, he put the pieces in play and he righted the ship from what's his face did. And I'm gonna be really frustrated for Tennessee if like they get punished for that, for what's his face, the last guy, I forget his name.
Yeah, Pruitt.
But I mean, even if they do get punished for it, you can't take away from their year this year. Um, I I would like to think that, and maybe this is me being biased. I think the only team that Heupel probably can, go into and have like the best time because of the cap space, because of the talent that's already there, probably would be the Broncos. So let's be honest with you. And the only connection, the connection there would be Peyton Manning. And I don't know if Peyton Manning wants to, who he cares about more. Does he care about Tennessee or Denver more?
Yeah.
That's a toss up. But that would be, I would think that would probably be the only coaching job, if it comes open, that might really entice him. Everything else that comes open might be a little bit too much of a headache. You have Sean McVay that might retire, and they've got all kinds of issues on their team. Who else is probably going to get fired this year in the NFL? I guess it could be anyone, but I don't think the Texans are going to be looking for a new coach yet. Um, Raiders, maybe. I don't know. It feels like Josh McDaniels are giving him time to do the whole thing. Oh well, no. There's the Colts. Are the Colts? Didn't they fire their head coach?
No, he's still there.
Has someone been fired in the NFL already?
Yeah, I don't remember who though.
Me neither.
But I don't know. Like I said, Heupel, he's number one in points. Like even with what we talked about the passing yards per game, his team is still 26th in the nation with points per game for the defense. It's just passing for 350 something. I think for 350 something, and then rushing for 200. I don't know. I just don't see it happening. But
two best offenses, in my opinion. I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna be Homer about this. The two best offenses in the SEC, personal opinion, are Tennessee Volunteers at number one, and the Razorbacks number two. If you like, Razorbacks actually get going when they play, their offense is really good. Well, their offense has been really good the past couple weeks, anyways. Even against bad defenses or not so great defenses. But those are the two best offenses. I kind of am the defense buckling like it has. It's maybe sad. I thought they could run the gauntlet. I would have loved to see those two teams play each other this year because Hendon Hooker and KJ Jefferson have two similar playing styles, I think that'd have been a lot of fun to watch those two guys battle it out. But that's not going to happen. So it is what it is.
Well, I was looking at LSU's schedule. They lost that game to Florida State by 1, which Florida State's crap. They beat Southern U 65-17. They only beat Mississippi State 31-16. Shut out New Mexico. They beat LSU or beat Auburn 21-17. So that's not very good. And then they get demolished by Tennessee. They barely beat Florida. Now they beat the dog mess out of Mississippi State. I get it.
Ole Miss. But, no. They beat Mississippi State too. They beat both of those teams.
Like you only have, well, I'll give Mississippi State. You have those 2 wins that are legitimate wins. The rest of them have been crap. And you're 10th. You're 10th in the nation.
That is only to be for Alabama. I cannot accept that other than it is only for the ratings and to bolster Alabama's resume.
All right. It's just, but anywho, I'm ready for it this weekend. I think if we can, maybe try to have another podcast that night, depending on if Tennessee wins.
I could be game for that.
So, but
because there's more football to talk about.
Yeah.
So much football to talk about.
But anywho, I think we're gonna
scratch the surface.
End it right there. Missing our other guys tonight, missing David, Luke and Ross. Hopefully we'll have them back for another episode. If anybody's listening to this, I know kind of created a website where you can listen to our podcast, look at some other stuff that we're all kind of doing. Don't remember the website offhand, but you can like Google Titan Adventure Gaming and you can try to find it. It's through Weebly. So I will share that with us in the future. But I've also been trying to stream some games recently, been streaming some Call of Duty, Fortnite with some of my friends and my son. Been doing some golf, fixing to stream the new Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare 2, fixing to stream the campaign and some multiplayer. But So that's what's going on with me. Be looking forward to some more podcasts. Going to try if everybody can work on this. I would love to start sitting down where we can podcast weekly or twice a week. I would love to get us scheduled on a certain night and just do it.
And maybe we can maybe do something together live the week of Thanksgiving. That'd be
I'd like
kind
to
of
do
that's
that.
like that'll be something that we're hopefully looking forward to
Yeah, I'd like to do like a little night at the rounds table kind of
because
discussion.
we'll be all well, I'll be there all week. I'll
Yep.
be in Sheridan all week. Yeah.
So, anyways, that's our podcast today, and appreciate everybody listening. And have a great night. See ya.